One of the things one of the things we see really is we see very inconsistent training patterns as coaches with the typical age group athlete for various reasons. So one of the uh, common areas for improvement is simply just becoming more consistent with your training. So when we talk about being adaptive, if on the plan there's an hour easy run for the day and swim session morning, hour easy run in the afternoon, and you do the swim session in the morning, fine. You get to the afternoon and or evening, and you're stuck for time. Then being adaptive means just doing maybe 30 minutes of that 60. You're getting something done, and you're just adapting to the time that you have available because you have to rush to a family event or you're called to do extra work or whatever it is. So being adaptive and being flexible with programming is important and balancing around your lifestyle. So number two, inability to stick with a long-term training program. So I would implore all athletes to buy into what your coach is prescribing, create a good relationship with them based around open, honest conversation and feedback, and stick to this for 1 year at a minimum, and you'll be surprised with the results. So again, a common area we see is just this inability to stick with a long-term training program. And when I say long-term, that's a minimum of 1 year to see gains and to get credible adaptations from the work you do. You really need to give it a minimum of 12 months. And you often see people that have a breakthrough performance in anything in the endurance world, and they're often asked the question, what's the secret, or how'd you make such a big improvement? And they'll often just say, I was ultra consistent for a long period of time, and I never got injured or sick, etc. Missed minimal days. So again, try and think more long term with a training program. Coaches or guests are not miracle workers, and they need time to get to know the athlete. They need time for them to find the right formula with a particular athlete, especially when they're new. And the athlete also needs time to adapt to these things. And ultimately, training adaptations don't happen in a matter of days or weeks. It's a long-term process. So try and think again longer term and where you could be in 12 months from now, 24 months from now, 3 years from now, etc. Under recovery, obviously a massive one in the endurance world. I think we came from a past experiences where for sure people were doing an awful lot of work and under fueling and looking like skeletons on a bike. So the message here is fuel for the work being done. Respect your recovery process daily or it will humble you. So we really need to look after our recovery, especially when we're not full-time athletes and that we have life stressors going on around us with family stuff, with work stuff, etc. So we need to make sure that we're fueling to be able to handle all of these stressors in our lives. And remember, our body doesn't differentiate between stressors. So whether it's family stuff, whether it's work stuff, whether it's training stressors, they're all stressors that are impacting the body. So we need to really ensure that we're fueling well, that we're getting our sleep. Those two are our number most important recovery methods. So fueling and sleep. So just look around in the world of triathlon, I guess, at the moment. You see people of all shapes or sizes. Look at the Ironman world champion, Solveig Loveset. She's not skin and bones. Look at Christian Blumenfeld, he's not skin and bones. So there's a lot of people they're fueling to be able to handle a bigger workload and to be able to recover properly. So it's not about the scales, it's about being able to do the work and be able to recover and adapt from it. Paralysis by analysis. So again, we live in an age now where we can pretty much measure everything and anything. We're living in an age where people are selling all sorts of gadgets and tools. So we need to be careful what type of data we are collecting and how we're utilizing that data and what we're measuring, etc. So there's learning to be able to identify what data collection is important relevant and what is just added noise. Not everything that can be measured is important, and not everything that is important can be measured. So it's something to remember. Um, we see with the various devices, Garmin, Whoop, etc. They all have their faults. They all have some forms of data or information that's coming back that's not accurate or not fully usable. And we need to be careful about the psychological side as well, to what we see on a screen, etc., and how that impacts your feeling and your thought process, etc. So we'll speak more about this in a little bit, but ultimately you need to make sure that you're having the discussion with your coach and you're understanding the data that you are collecting and why it's relevant and why it's important, and just ensuring that anything you are collecting is actually accurate and that it's actually being used. There's no point in collecting information if you're not reflecting on it or you're not using it. You might as well just not bother. So just be careful with the whole data and technology side of things. Inability to feel training efforts. So one of the most important things you can, uh, one of the most, I guess, important tools you can have at your disposal as an endurance athlete in any sport is the ability to feel the training efforts that you're doing. So to feel what easy zone one, zone two, whatever you want to call it, feels like, to feel what threshold feels like, to feel what race specific paces, efforts feel like. Uh, by right, you should be able to know these things without a watch on your wrist. So if you were to go to the track and run eight, say 6 or 8 times 1K threshold repeats, or if you were to do some 200-meter threshold reps in the pool, or you were to do some 10-minute threshold reps on the bike, you should be able to feel what those paces, power outputs, etc., are without any gadgets. Because ultimately, when we go on a race, we need to be able to make decisions in the moment, and we need to be able to feel what's going on within our body and know when to pick up pace, back off, hold, etc., and make honest, correct decisions. So this feel is so important. I remember when I went to Qatar for the first time, I had this group of endurance athletes and we're at the track, and these guys didn't ever used watches before, so they didn't know how to use a watch, but they also didn't know how to pace. So simple things like if you set a workout like 10 times 200 and we'll say 30 seconds, some of them would be 26, some of them would be 36, and they were all over the place. So there was a whole learning process for those guys in terms of the various workouts and paces and how to control it and what they should be feeling, and the education around the science, etc. So very important thing. Also on race day, if something goes wrong, if you're out in a 70.3 and your power meter stops working, and this is what you're used to using all the time, what are you going to do? How are you going to make decisions? You know, if you're out in the run and the watch battery goes, again, how are you going to pace it, etc. You need to know the feel of these things. You need to be able to handle uh, any sort of pacing within a race scenario without any of the gadgets. So something to think about as well. Number six, lack of belief. So belief in oneself is a massive part of performance and competition. We know this. So this belief, I believe, comes from one's life journey, comes from your own personality, comes from one's consistency in training over long periods of time, previous competition performances, comes from the coach-athlete relationship, comes from the environment we are placed ourselves in. So this kind of belief and confidence in yourself comes from many different areas, and everybody is very individual on this front. Um, but having having self-belief in you, in your ability, before you line up on a in a competition, goes an awful long way. So again, you got to reflect on some of these areas: your own journey, past experience, your own personality, consistency in training, the coach athlete relationship and how that is, the trust, etc. there, and then the environment that you're actually training and place yourself in as well, and and building the self belief there. So this self-belief, whole confidence side, very, very important. Self-reflection. So this essentially is the ability to ask yourself the difficult questions and give yourself difficult answers quite often. So one common area we see often, and from a coaching perspective, is the lack of ability for an athlete to be able to self-reflect. So to be able to reflect on maybe it's an individual training session and how they executed that training session, going too fast, doing more, going more power, whatever it is. Maybe it's the ability to self-reflect on the level they're actually currently at and thinking more about where they would like to be. Maybe it's the ability to self-reflect on competition performance and, if it doesn't go right, asking some difficult questions first of yourself, and being able to get those answers. So self-reflection, I think, is an important tool for everybody in life, athletes, coaches, whatever job you're working in, family life, etc. Being able to park the ego and be able to ask yourself the difficult questions, and when you come up with some answers as well, be able to put those into practice. So there's a whole world on self-reflection that you can read on, but definitely an area to really work on, I think. The ego, again, massive area in the world of endurance sport. It's something that holds us back as coaches, and it holds us back as athletes as well. We need to be able to park the ego and be very honest and open with ourselves, that ability to self-reflect, ask the difficult questions, um, and just really try and keep things simple and stick with what is manageable for you over long periods of time. So we we often want to be at this level of performance, and really maybe we're only at this level of performance, and we've got to ask ourselves, park the ego and ask ourselves, okay, there's a gap from where I want to be and where I am currently, and how am I going to get there? What do I need to do? What do I need to get better at, etc. And so having that conversation as well with your coach can be very beneficial. Um, Equally, going to an important competition, often your coach will have dialed in with you what potential race paces, power efforts, etc., heart rates, whatever you use are possible for race day. And on that day, we need to be sure of what's possible, or a range at least of what's possible. And we need to park the ego and not go out at harder paces or work at higher power outputs or swim harder, etc. And then we impact the rest of our race. So um, definitely an ego is a big thing in human life in general, but when it comes to endurance performance, something you need to get hold of and be able to park. Expectations. So again, I had this conversation only with a female triathlete the other day. We talked about not overly thinking about where you want to be in the future, where you were in the past, trying to be where you are now. So if I've written here, be where you're at, not where you think you should be, not where you were in the past, not where you hope to be in the future. Yes, it's okay having a goal for race performance, etc., or somewhere where you want to something you want to achieve, or where you want to be in the future. But ultimately, you need to be in the present, be where you are now, and that's where you're at. So the time you're swimming in the pool for a particular set right now, or the power output you're putting out on a threshold bike, or a 5K, a 10K race performance on run, whatever it is, that's where you're at. So you need to be where you're at, and then you build and grow from there. And again, that's something we see often where people have expectations beyond where they're realistically at right now. That's potentially where some physiological testing or a race performance like a 5K, 10K road race or a swim time trial or whatever it is can bring some evidence-based information to the table, and you can be sure of basically where you're at right now. But again, just the message here is try to be where you're at and build from there, and not where you were in the past, or where you want to be in the future. Number 10, so focus on weight over performance. Obviously, a massive talking point over the years in any endurance sport. People focusing on weight, what the scale says, and instead of focusing on potentially body composition instead, or ultimately focusing on performance. That's what matters most. I've seen plenty endurance runners and triathletes achieve performances at a heavier weight than what would be considered normal for them or what they thought was normal for them. And then I've seen them produce very mediocre performances or poor performances when they've actually actively tried to lose weight, and then they've hampered and impacted their performance. So we need to be very careful. We need to focus on consistent training habits, consistent recovery from training, consistent healthy eating patterns over time, and not the scales. And I think if you do these things, if your training is consistent and you do it well, if you have consistent recovery, if you look after your sleep and your nutrition on a consistent basis, again, a minimum of 3 to 6 months plus, then you will be at the weight that you should be at. And we don't need to be focusing on the scales. The number on the scales is not going to tell you what you're going to produce as a performance in competition. And again, just look across the world of triathlon. There's age groupers and elites at all shapes and sizes that produce very high level performances. So again, get away from the focus on the scales and focus on um, just the day-to-day process, the consistency of training habits, the recovery habits, your healthy eating, and then you'll be where you need to be. So focus on you and not trying to look like any somebody else. Often we get sidetracked and we're looking at pictures or photos of other people, or maybe you're looking at pictures or photos of what you look like once upon a time, when you were 30, but maybe now you're 45 or 50. It's a long time ago. We can't compare like with like. So try and get away from the focus of a number on the scales, and let's focus more on the process of training, the good habits and routines on a daily basis, looking after the sleep and nutrition. And then you'll find if you do that for kind of a 6 month, 12-month plus period, you'll be where you need to be if you're doing the right things and you have the right habits in place. Environment, environment is a massive one for me. I think the surroundings, so where you live, training facilities, nature, the people you're surrounded by, the coaching you're getting, all those things have a massive impact on performance. I think there's a reason why we see a lot of elite athletes go to uh, altitude locations and warm weather locations, not just for the heat or the altitude. These places happen to be extremely beautiful in nature in the mountains, typically trails, good facilities, good weather, etc. And they're placing themselves in an environment where they can get the most benefit from their training and basically an environment where they're happy. So I've written here an athlete should try to place themselves in an environment that gives them a psychological and emotional lift, which in turn can lead to increased productivity. Think about where you live, training facilities, location, people that surround you, etc. Get into nature where possible. So I think we need to, as endurance athletes, we need to use nature as much as possible. Don't always be running around the track, or don't always be running on the same road. If you can get into a forest, if you can run on a trail, go up the mountain, if you can bike in nice scenery and get up around the mountains, or if you have quiet country roads, whatever it is. Same with the pool, swimming in open water often is far more enjoyable at, the times of year where we can do that, in the sea or a lake, etc., than traipsing up and down a 25-meter pool, looking at the tiles and counting the lengths. So I think environment is so important on many levels, and it can really make a massive difference. And again, there's a reason why elites move to certain parts of the world and place themselves in certain environments. The Gironas, the Font Romos, the Flagstaffs, the Samaritzes, etc. All these places, there some people are very lucky where they live and they have access to beautiful nature and beautiful facilities and weather, etc. And others are a bit more unlucky. But um, I think you feel it as well as an endurance athlete. Anytime you go on a warm weather camp, you guys, I think people are going to Lanzarote in March. Again, you go to a new environment, nice weather, nice climbs, other endurance athletes you're surrounded by other endurance athletes. Everybody's training hard. That's what I mean by environment. It gives you a lift, it gives you a boost, and ultimately that means you have a better adaptation for training and you're going to perform better. So the environment is a huge part to play in for everybody. So have think about that, and there's little things you can do to to improve on that front, I think. Comparison to others, a massive one. So comparison is a natural human behavior that we all engage in at times in life, and it's said to be the thief of joy. So again, we see as coaches a lot, endurance athletes often comparing themselves to others, whether it's how they look, whether it's equipment, bikes, etc., whether it's the training they're doing. I think a single most important thing to realize in life is that everybody is an experiment of one. Everybody is in their own individual. There's only one of you in the world. The way you look, your physiology, your genetics, your thought process, your psychology, your emotional energy, all of these things, your whole personality. Everybody is different. So you need to again have that self-belief and self-confidence in yourself and not feel the need to have to worry or compare yourself to others on a constant basis. This only detracts from you and what you should be focusing on. I think just try and focus on you always, and just you and your relationship with your coach, and that's all that's important, not what other people are doing, because you are like I said, you're your own unique person, your physiology, your genetics, all of these things, what's going on in your life, the stressors. So it's only you and your coach that fully probably know about all those things, and it's important that you focus on you and avoid the comparison to others. It just really it's the thief of joy, like you've seen written often, and it's again, just impacts negatively. It doesn't help in any way, and you can't control what other people are doing, etc. Just focus on you and what you can control. The ability to master the mundane. So there's a little quote here that I came across that I really like. So superlative performance is really a confluence of dozens of small skills or activities, each one learned or stumbled upon, which have been carefully drilled into habit, then are fitted together in a synthesized whole. There is nothing extraordinary or superhuman in any one of those actions, only the fact that they are done consistently and correctly and all together produce excellence. So you can apply this to so many areas of life, but it's just such a beautiful quote. And again, it boils back to the fact that as an endurance athlete, it's not an easy sport. There's a lot of time, effort, and energy involved. It requires a lot of training time, and it's about mastering the mundane. The best endurance athletes in the world have the ability just to master these fundamental basics, the mundane, for 30 to 40 hours a week in, week out, for year on end. There was a study done on the Norwegians, and I think it was Christian Blumenfeld over a 4 year period, a recent 4 year period. His average training hours on a day were 3 hours 45 minutes for a 4 year period, unbroken, 365 days for a 4 year period stretch. And that includes if he's taking holidays, if he's taking sick days, if he's taking days off from training, all of those. It's just non-stop, 365 days by four. 4-year period, and that was his average, almost 4 hours training every day. That's what he averaged. So again, the ability, there's a psychological component to that. You have to be a slightly different in a way to be able to go through and handle that amount of hours of training over and over again, repeating these same things on a daily basis. And again, just like the quote says here, there's never anything extraordinary or superhuman about any of it. None of the training is anything we'll say exceptional or out of the ordinary in a way. It's a lot of hours with a lot of good habits and good routines and doing it day in day out for long periods of time. And then ultimately that's what produces the excellence in the end. So yeah, something to think about, just to get used to the ability to master the fundamentals, the basics, and repeat things day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, and be able to do that over long periods of time. The longer you can do that, the better. It's not always exciting, it's not always fun. Some of it is boring at times, but that's just the way endurance training is. But we need to just try and make things more interesting and more varied at times by just doing different types of training, by the environment that we're in, by training with people, having a laugh, etc., and a group sessions. All those things help, but ultimately you have to do the work, and there's nothing magic and spectacular about it. So finding life balance, obviously a massive one. Athletes must realize that to achieve great things in endurance sport, it requires time and effort, and creating space in your week to get the training done and recover well from it. So a key part here is creating space in your week. So ultimately, when you're chatting with your coach, there's conversations around, okay, how much training could we actually fit in here into a week? What can you actually recover from? How much space do you actually have in your life? And you have to accept that you have people are either in full-time education or you have a full-time job, and people have families and kids, etc. Everybody's different in terms of how much space and time they have in their life. But you have to accept how much time you have in your life, and then ultimately how much training is going to fit in there, and more importantly, how much training you can actually recover from. So again, I had a conversation with a female triathlete just this morning. Busy lifestyle, a lawyer, highly stressful job. It's like, all right, am I doing enough training? Do I need to do more, etc.? It's not about doing more. It's again, the conversation is around how much training you can actually fit in according to your lifestyle, and more importantly, how much that we can actually recover from. So the question is not about more, it's about what we can recover from, and what you're doing now is enough. But I flipped the question back to her. I said, ultimately, it's not about doing more training. I would like to flip the question and say, how about we try and recover better? So look, let's self-reflect and ask ourselves the question, can we improve the sleep? The answer was yes. Can we improve the nutrition? The answer was yes. So let's focus more on these areas and try and improve the recovery side rather than thinking about doing more training. You do more training, you're just going to put yourself in more of a hole, or you can't recover from it and you don't get benefit from it. So you might have heard the stress plus rest, um, and that's when we get the adaptation. So we stress the body, we allow it to rest and recover, and that's when we get the adaptation. So we need to, it's not always about doing more or going harder, etc. We need to think about the recovery side and what space we have in our life to be able to handle the workload and be able to essentially get the benefits from it. And then the second part of this is aligning your goal race distances events with how much time you can give to training and recovery each week, and be realistic with this. This is a big thing we see often as coaches. Maybe someone comes and they say, I want to do an Ironman, but I only have 3 hours a week to give to it. And it's like, and that happened once. And my response was, okay, uh, if you if you came to me and said that you wanted to become a doctor and said that you could only study for 3 hours a week or go to 3 hours a week of classes, or if you went to the university and said you want to become a doctor and you could only give 3 hours of your time a week, what would they say to you? You know, again, it's a rhetorical question. We know the answer. So it's the same in the world of endurance sports. Don't say that you want to prepare for a marathon or you want to prepare for an Ironman and you're only willing to give it 3 hours or you only have 3 hours of space in your week for training. So we need to be realistic around our own life situation and how much time that we can give to the particular event. So sometimes for some people, it's far better that you train for a sprint or Olympic distance and you do maybe the national series or whatever, than trying to train for an Ironman and you can't give it enough time. Or you have a highly stressful life, you have 4 kids, you have a stressful job, and then you want to try and do an Ironman. It's just, again, we need to maybe self-reflect a bit and say, is this the right thing for me? And often what we find with the longer stuff, somebody that trains for a marathon and running, somebody trains for Ironman, it takes an awful lot out of the body, and often it can suck a lot of motivation and energy out of the person. And then maybe the following 6 months, they struggle to find routine or to keep training going, and they maybe potentially end up out of the sport, etc. So sometimes it's better to focus on shorter events. This is impactful anyway for your physiology and your race development, and you can race more often and you can have more fun doing that instead of maybe targeting that one race. So, something to think about. I think the two key points here again is just creating space in your week. How much space have I in my life to give to training? And then having a conversation with your coach around working the training around that. And then also thinking about your goal race, your target objectives, right? How much can I actually give to this in terms of recovery each week, and being realistic around that. So just really think about those areas, and ultimately, again, we want to strive to be doing this for long periods of time, a minimum of 12 months plus, and ideally you're doing it for a number of years until you never see where you can really be as an endurance athlete until you've at least given it 3 or 4 plus years. The difference in somebody from year zero, from month one to year 4 or 5 is incredible if they're willing to give it that amount of time and be patient and build each year. And finding joy in the journey, so important. Again, we get bogged down with data and metrics and technology and race performances, etc., achieving goals, and we need to try and find some joy in the journey. So, as coaches, we often see athletes getting very obsessive around their training program, the exact training zones, paces, the data from their watches, what Strava says, race performances, etc., and continue down this path and they lose their love for the sport. So it's critical to have balance in endurance sports and learn to bring your best each day, but at the same time find joy in the process, find joy in the long-term journey. So often it's not about achieving the goal, that Ironman, that half Ironman, that marathon, whatever you're training for. Often it's about really the journey and what you learn about yourself on that road over those months, over those years, um, and finding joy in the daily process of going out the door and training. I know personally I need to do something every morning myself, uh, some form of exercise, and it makes me feel good. It sets me up for the day. When I go to work, then I feel like a more productive person. So I generally enjoy the two things I enjoy most about endurance sport. I enjoy the process of just going out training. I enjoy training. I always have since I was a teenager. And I also enjoy the battle in a race environment. It's just good fun being in a battle, whatever the race is. Doesn't matter what it is, cycling, running race, triathlon, any distance. There's a fun and competitive side to just being in a battle with someone in within a race, in a competition day, and I enjoy that. So just try and find some joy in the journey, and don't becoming a slave to training zones and watches and data and technology and performance results, etc. I think if you look at all the best elite athletes in the world, they'll all tell you, most of them, that they love the process of going out training. They love to do the work. And if you look at somebody like Blumenfeld, the Norwegians, those guys just love doing the work. They love training. It's just what they live for. And there's a reason why they are the best of in the sport, because they've spent a lot of years doing a lot of work over long periods of time. So it's just you have to be able to find some joy in the process. So don't forget that. And one last one that I speak about that's so important, that we often again we see day in day out from a coaching perspective, these two areas: intensity control and session execution. So I think coaches are accountable for providing clear and unambiguous guidelines when prescribing training. So when you get a training plan from your coach, we're responsible as coaches to make sure that that's clear, it's understandable, and that you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. But then on the flip side, athletes are accountable for adhering to the session rationale. So what knowing, all right, if I have a threshold swim in the morning, that I know what this session is. I know why I'm doing it. I know how many reps I'm doing. I know what the recovery is. I know the effort or pace, etc., that I should be holding. So that you're adhering to that rationale that the coach has given, the guidelines essentially. That then you go and execute that as per what the coach was looking for, or essentially as you were feeling on the day, and that you make wise decisions also in the moment if the coach is not with you. So what I mean by that is, maybe the session is 20 by 100 threshold in the pool, 10 seconds recovery, whatever it is. You're meant to do them on, say, 130s, and you start doing them and it just feel a little harder than normal. Again, it's wise then in that moment, maybe you drop them back to go 132s, 133s instead, and you're able to finish the session. But it's at the effort that your coach was looking for, the RP or etc., or the range of paces that they gave. So you've made wise decisions in that moment. Now you've got more benefit from that session, and now we're going to get better adaptation from that training. So intensity control and session execution are critically important to learn how to control the intensity. So your coach will have prescribed the training. He'll have probably given a range of paces or powers or efforts or something along those lines, whatever way you work it. And you have to be able to park the ego and make sure that you control the session at that intensity, not going longer because you felt great, or not doing them harder or faster because you were feeling good, etc. Try and adhere because your coach is prescribing that for a reason, and they're trying to maybe progress those things over the weeks or months, or they want to leave room for improvement or progression over time, places for you to go essentially. Um, there's no point in you doing threshold work at the same pace in September, and then next June it's in the exact same place and you haven't progressed. You're not doing more volume, or it hasn't improved in terms of the effort or the pace, the speed, etc. And it's in the exact same place. So again, try and adhere to the rationale, have good intensity control. This is what the Norwegians, I guess, do extremely well, and elite athletes now are doing very well in terms of really ensuring that the intensity for a particular type of training is done in the right zone, or heart rate or pace or power or whatever way metrics you use. And then also that they really execute that session well on the day. So again, like I said, if the coach is not there on the side and not, feeding into the session, that you're able to make wise decisions. So if we look at something as simple as, let's use a threshold run workout. So I'll use a personal example for myself. So my run threshold is about 335 per kilometer. So I could go out on a flat road wearing super shoes and do 10 by a K off a minute at about 3:35 or so pace and be at an RP of about 7.5 out of 10. And again, I'll hold this pace for about a half marathon or so. I could do that same session at the same effort on a rolling trail in a pair of normal, uh, we'll say Nike shoes, just normal training shoes. And that pace could be 10 seconds per kilometer slower on a rolling trail surface in a pair of normal training shoes. Could be more 3:45. Now I could go to a gravel trail that's rolling on rolling hills and it's in warmer conditions, and that could be closer to 4 minutes per K. So now we've had a 25-second spread in terms of what that threshold session looks like, depending on climate, depending on terrain, depending on surface, and depending on the shoes you're wearing, and depending ultimately how you're feeling in the moment. So then we have to be very careful about how we execute that session. So you have to park the ego. It's not about adhering, then sticking to an exact pace or an exact power or etc. You need to be able to make wise decisions in the moment, depending on how your body is feeling, depending on where you're doing that, the environment you're in, etc. Um, and the same goes for bikes, same goes for the pool. Depending on the type of session you're doing, how you're feeling, you need to be able to make wise decisions and adhere to that intensity or rationale that the coach is looking for, and get very good at that. Because ultimately, when you go on a race, any distance, in that race, your coach is not with you telling you what power to hold in that particular moment or what effort, etc. You have to be able to make decisions in the moment, depending on how you're feeling in the race and depending on the environment. It could be you running into headwinds, biking into headwinds. You're going uphill, you're going downhill. It's hot and humid, or it's cold and wet. All of these things impact your fueling, etc., impact how you're feeling in the moment. So it goes back to what we talked about earlier. Feel. You have to know how your body feels. You have to know how to make correct decisions and get yourself from A to B, from start line to finish line as fast as possible. That's essentially the name of the game. The time on the clock at the end doesn't lie. So intensity control and session execution. Now think about how much benefit you get if you were to do this for 6 months or 12 months on a daily basis, 1 or 2 sessions a day, and you nail the rationale and the guidelines set out by your coach, and you execute and control the intensity for all your training, and you do that for a 12-month period consistently over someone that doesn't, and they're always doing half of their training too hard, they're adding on more, they're getting the intensity control wrong, and they're making poor decisions in the moment. Think about the difference of those two athletes. One is going to go in and perform at such a higher level compared to the person that's completely getting that wrong. So it's a learning process. It's a conversational process between coach and athlete. But I think those two things make such a difference to the age group triathlete if you're willing to park the ego and learn how to do those things very, very well. It makes a huge, huge difference. So I hope that makes sense. So those are our 16 essentially key areas for improvement that I've seen over time working with a lot of different endurance athletes across the board in different cultures, different ages, different levels of performance. And a lot of this stuff, by the way, as well goes for the elite athletes as well. These are a lot of areas where they can improve on too. But I think as endurance athletes in general, if we nail those 16 areas, then you can really bring things to another level. And it's not about more training. A lot of this stuff is just about being smarter, making better decisions, better behaviors, better daily habits, and parking the ego. And if you do that, serious performance gains can be had.
Thanks a million, Steve. That was brilliant. Some great insights there, and a few plenty of notes taken and things to take on board. And I would say everyone else is in the same boat. Does anybody have any questions on any of the stuff there that Steve was chatting about, or just in general that you might have?
No, I think I covered most of the bases there. Obviously, a few of those things were everything that you've been telling me to do over the last few months as well. Whenever I throw in a random session on his WIF workout where it's completely on off script, like throwing in one that's where are you putting out this power over this time and doing this, that, and the other. Like it's not on the program. Just stick to the program. You'll get more out of it doing what you're told and doing what you think you should be doing. Just watching a stupid YouTube video on like how to build your power in 12 weeks. Like do X, Y, Z, but no, just stick to what your coach is saying.
I think, yeah, Sean, that's a good point. I think a key point there is sometimes going off script is okay. I think some type of personalities, and we see as coaches, some type of personalities need to do it every now and then. It's just the way they're wired. But I think the key is maybe having just the conversation with the coach and just say, listen, today I just don't feel like doing that workout because I'm just not feeling it, and maybe I want to go off script a little and do this. And if you have the conversation, then at least you can have the agreement, say, listen, fine, do this, but maybe the coach will say just don't go crazy, or don't, you know, do a certain thing. So I have a guy down in down south. This guy is a brilliant talent. I mean, this guy runs. He's a triathlete slash runner. I mean, this guy runs 14:35 for 5K, right, in the road running. He can bike like hell. I keep telling him he can be an incredible triathlete, but he likes to go off script sometimes. So um, sometimes I just throw him a bone as a coach, and he just needs a moment of madness. Like he wants to go and do a 20-minute test and just bury himself, or he wants to join a local TT and just go loggerheads for 30K or whatever he wants. And I understand the way he's wired, and I say, okay, that's fine. But the following couple of days, we're going to go easy. We're going to make sure we recover, and we'll get back into the plan. So sometimes people need it, and they need to go off script a little. The key is just not going off script weekly, and that's where you start digging a hole, you know.
A few people are going to throw that back in my face, Steve, and say, "Sure, Steve said we're allowed to go off script." But no, I think you're right there, and as you say, when it's kind of planned or agreed, or especially when people are on holidays or on a training camp or do something, like I always say, it's enjoyable to go and do something, just go up a mountain or just no real
Yeah,
plan, enjoy yourself. I think in your in your case, Sean, it's probably just a bit of eagerness. So like new enough to the sport, and as you say, you're getting sidetracked by, oh, if you just no, or I think it's people looking for about a validation or test themselves. Like, oh, if I want to hold this power, let's see how it feels in a race or whatever. And you're kind of jumping stages where there's usually a plan to get you there. But no, definitely, as you say, for the enjoyment or depending on how people's wired, and there's a lot of wired people on here at this call, like so. As you
yeah,
say, throw them a bone sometimes, and we have a bit of a joke in our group. It's the Sunday ride. If you're the Sunday late for mass, so if somebody's late back from mass, it ends up a 20 or 30 mile time trial to get back in time, and sometimes they're planned as well. We just call it, let's go for it and enjoy it. But that's not every week, and I know that people do that every week, but it's not every week, and it's enjoyable when it happens. And then right, that's not sustainable all the time, but it's about a crack and enjoyment. And you talk about it for a few weeks, and it sort of
yeah,
lifts the spirits and the environment and stuff you're talking about as well.
yeah. You actually hitting a good point there, Emmett, as well. I think we often see people. We feel the need sometimes, especially if we're new to endurance sport, to prove ourselves in training, to kind
Mhm.
of to get confidence from. So we want to obviously get confidence from training, but we should get confidence from training by reeling off 6, 12 months of training, staying healthy and injury free, and doing the right things. We should be trying to get confidence from that approach rather than get confidence from blasting an all out set in the pool, or trying to hammer a time trial on the bike or whatever it is, try we try and use maybe smaller, less important races as maybe benchmarks to see where we're at along the way, and test where you're at in those moments. But in for the majority of training, we need to try and stay clear of this mentality to try and prove ourselves each day in the pool or on the bike or on the run and gain confidence from that. I think the longer and the more experienced you get in the endurance world, you don't feel the need to do that. You know that if you follow a plan, stay healthy and injury free, and you're seeing the kind of you're getting the data and information from the training, and you're seeing that you're progressing, then that's all you need. And then you know that if you do this for long enough and you go into your races, that you'll produce the goods. Um, but it can be difficult. But the message is to try and stay clear of just the proving yourself in training or pushing harder to gain confidence. Try and see the bigger picture and the longer term view, and that it's more important to reel off more weeks and months than to prove yourself over one session or one day.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was just trying to see if there's any shortcuts to be made as well, because it was just so ironic whenever you said that you had an athlete that was trying to do an Ironman in 3 months. Like it's so funny that because like my first event now is at the end of June and it's an Ironman, and I've only been 9 months of training in beforehand. It's my first event, like so like the closer it gets, the more I'm realizing, is this, did I bite off more than I could chew here? Like because like you're doing the sessions, you're staying to your heart rate zones, you're trying to do them, but then you're like, right, whenever you're trying to analyze your session afterwards, and then you're like, that power output over that length of time it felt grand, but then you're like, oh, I could definitely do more, but then you're not really thinking it like that's fine for, you could do more for an hour and a half or 90 minutes on Zwift, but you're going to be on your feet or on the saddle or in the water, like combined effort for the day of like 14, 15 hours. Like what you do in 90 minutes or 2 hours doesn't really matter. It's supposed to be the whole day, and not completely dying on your feet 10 miles through the marathon at the end. Like so it's just trying to just not lose the head and try and see where can I pick up anything here by doing this stupid thing on Zwift for 2 hours when I should just be doing what I was told.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sean. And what you'll find is ultimately it's the time period from now until the day you line up in your Ironman that's going to make the difference. And it's reeling off as many as those weeks as possible according to Emmett's plan is what's going to help you perform as best you can on the day. So it's trying to be patient, just rolling with the plan, open, honest communication with your coach, and just yeah, doing the work smart as far as then, and ensuring you're recovering. And then it's a patient process. The endurance game is all about patience. And then come race day, you're going to have a whole other patient approach that you'll have to, Emmett will be discussing with you for Ironman, because it's like it's a long day, and there's a lot of patience involved in terms of pacing the swim and the bike and the fueling and getting ready for the marathon. And then there's a patient approach to the whole day as well when you get there. So it's yeah, patience is a key word to just through the training process, and obviously for a long race like that too.
Yeah, 100%. Is there anybody else with a question?
I have a question. Do you
Go
see
ahead,
for
Barry.
them national endurance groups hosted by Athletics Ireland? I know I'm like young, but like in the next few years, I would like to go to them, and I want to know, is there like a certain like time you have to get in order to qualify for it?
For the running side, is it?
For a running side, yeah.
Yeah, so typically they have regional squads for juniors. So they'll have kind of the four regions have squads for, we'll say, that kind of 15 to 18, 19-year-old bracket, and they're normally selected by finishing positions, say at national championships, so in cross country or times on the track. And then there's national squads then above that, which would be for people that are qualifying for like international championships. So there would be the first championships essentially are the schools international championships, which you qualify through doing the schools All Ireland track and field championships. And then in the intermediate age group, there's the first two people in each event get to qualify and represent Ireland in the home international. And then when you go on to under 20 level, say in the club structure, there's the European Junior Championships, the World Junior Championships, where there's actually qualifying times. Um, but essentially, the best place to benchmark yourself would be in the schools All Ireland cross country championships, schools All Ireland track and field championships, in the endurance events, or the club All Ireland, the cross country, and the club All Ireland track and field. Those four competitions, and you race the best in Ireland, and you find out where you're at, and you see your time on the clock. 1,500, 3,000 meters, whatever the event is.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good stuff
But
there.
sorry, Dara, as well, what you could do is you could go on the Athletics Ireland website, and if you look at the results, go to you could go to the National Cross Country Championships. They were in Derry there recently. I don't
Aye.
know. And you can see all the results there don't look at times or anything, doesn't matter in cross country, but you can see like the age groups, like under 20, under 18, and you'll see the names of the people. Maybe you recognize someone you run against, or you recognize triathletes in there. There's a few triathletes ran in it. And then equally, you can go on the website results and look at the All Ireland schools track and field results from last June, or the All Ireland school or All Ireland clubs, like under 20, under 18, the age group national championships, and you'll see what people are running for 1,500 meters, 3,000 meters, 5,000 meters, and you get a gauge of what the best in the country are doing, or the top 10, etc.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Always.
Anybody else quite with a question there? Don't be shy. I'll just bring some up in the meantime, see if somebody might have a question after. But in terms, obviously, you touched there on intensity control and session execution, meaning by going, which is something I'm always sort of trying to get across. But just for a bit of context, because I think we see it a lot, that the biggest mistake is probably the easy stuff done too hard, or people just, and that's sometimes intentional and sometimes unintentional, where people just go out and run and find that sort of medium effort that's not easy, not hard. But like, so what I find interesting is like an average enough age group triathlete, maybe they can run 20 minutes, 21 minutes, 22 minutes even. And, they might go out for a 90-minute run, and it's not that much slower, maybe not a 90-minute run, but say a 60-minute run that's not that much slower than their 5K best time in terms of 30, 40 seconds per K slower. Like when you're working with these top runners, especially and triathletes, how much easier is there easy than that pace that they can go to in a race, say over 5K, 10K, or even half marathon?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Emmett. I think there's a couple of points in this. One, with obviously the more elite the athlete, the bigger the range is there between the race pace, whatever distance that is, and their easy stuff. But equally, you'd be amazed how slow they run in comparison to what some people do. They do a lot of elite triathletes and runners. They actually run quite easy because they're doing such a big volume of work in general that they can't afford for the easy stuff start to become, steady stuff, or to start to become harder than it needs to be. So I think they understand intensity control, and they know that if I'm going to do a big volume of work here in the week or a lot of hours, and I need to keep this my easy days easy. And there's a reason and a rationale for that. The second thing I'll say is, we'll say, if we look at it from a running perspective, uh, I think for easy running and to control, we'll say, the intensity, and to make improvement, we'll say good aerobic improvements, I think a lot of people should use a walk jog protocol, and people don't like hearing that, but they should. So I'll give you a live example of a triathlete. So I started working with a female triathlete about 7 weeks ago, and she had a lot of running issues like niggles, injuries, lower limb stuff, um, and everything was quite intense from when I looked to the past training. So we went on a walk jog protocol. I had a deep conversation with her first around the really, all right, this is why we're doing it. This is the rationale. We're doing it to decrease the load. So it decreases the load from running. So if you do an hour of consistent running, you're constantly loading the floor. There's a lot of your body weight going into the ground. There's a lot of load, a lot of stress on the soft tissue. Whereas if you made that 6 times 8 minutes with a two, so it's 8 minutes, 2 minutes walk, 8 minutes, 2 minutes walk. There's far less load. We can control the intensity by leaving. We can make sure the 8 minute segment is done at the normal easy pace, but then we have a 2 minute walk, a steady walk. But during that walk, we ensure to give time where that heart rate drops, and we ensure that the overall load of that 60 minutes then is easy as it should be, and we're doing it at lower heart rates, and we're adapting over time. And this progressed. So we started with something like along the lines of you know, I think it was along the lines of 6 minutes steady walk, and it's good, like a steady kind of power walk, 4 minutes easy jog. That was like day one by three. So 30 minutes total, 12 minutes of running, 18 minutes of walking. And we progressed this uh, all the way through until last week, where on she was going to do a 5K park run on the Saturday. So the first time we progressed this all the way, eventually it became 9 minutes, sorry, 8 minutes, 2 minutes for an hour. So now it became 48 minutes of running, 2 minutes. Uh, so 8 minutes running, easy running, 2 minutes steady walking for an hour. So it's 48 minutes of running, 12 minutes of walking. That's where it progressed to. And then the Wednesday before this park run, the plan was we would just do 6 minutes, sorry, 7 minutes easy run, 1 minute pick up at a threshold field, and then 2 minutes walk, and we did that for an hour. So that was the only session of what, if you could call it a session. It was 6 minutes of threshold work or threshold field in there in the whole 6 week period. Now, this also, we used to add strides, so not like a relaxed 20-second strides for good leg turnover, walk back recovery after these as well, just 3 times a week, uh, to work on that kind of turnover side of things. So to kind of, she never really worked on any of that type of stuff before. She was doing short 10-second sprints on the bike, that kind of thing, to work the fast twitch fibers. So we were working on that area as well on the bike. And then she went in the 5K, does the park run. She goes 18:30, runs 3:42 average per kilometer. And her best ever 5K was like 19:10 before that. And again, the message there was, it wasn't just the running alone that this protocol helped, this walk jog protocol, and developing it over time. It was the strides, developing the leg turnover, but it was also the work being done on the bike, 10-second sprints, really trying to wake up that, uh, you know, high end power, high end leg turnover, that kind of wake up those fast twitch fiber stuff that she just hadn't done before, and then that all kind of helped transfer into this faster run Uh, and now the run program starts to work into being able to do now some threshold stuff, doing our first workout this week of some threshold, 3 minute threshold reps, and starting to build that area, but keeping in the walk jog on the easy days. That's staying there. So any easy run day, we're staying with that because it's less load. She's had no niggles, no issues in terms of injuries or any feelings there. And we've also progressed to fitness. So I think the walk jog protocol for a lot of people can work. And that's with someone, a female age group triathlete, very good age group triathlete, but running 18:30. So for sure, anyone that's slower than that can do it. I've done it myself in the extreme temperatures out in the Middle East. I've used the walk jog protocol and I ran a 75-minute half marathon doing a lot of walk jogs just to keep my heart rate down in kind of higher temperatures. So it works and it's less load, but I guess it's parking the ego and it's not always about going harder or doing continuous runs all the time.
Yeah, that's it's mad to think that works, or else people don't believe you until it happens. It happened obviously with myself coaching a few people that, and even that going easier and keeping that intensity controlled. And some people say, yeah, if I keep that heart rate, I'll have to walk. And it's like, well, we'll walk then. If it's a hill or on the head one, you might need to walk to let the heart rate drop. So, but it gives them consistency as well. So in your case with her having niggles and stuff, it just means they're consistent and they put a good 6 week block of running regardless of intensity or intervals or anything. They just ran 3 times a week, 4 times a week, whatever it was, for 6 weeks. So now they're quicker, and they'd be like, that's mad. And often in the case of age group triathletes, especially newer people in the sport, 1, 2, 3 years in, they have a lot of that lower end aerobic endurance to gain, I feel. So just like in your case there, like they will run quicker in a 5K even without touching 5K or threshold intervals, just being consistent and easy because they're getting all the benefits of capillarization, of efficiency, oxygen transport. All those things are become more efficient and never give themselves time to develop because they've been running too hard or getting injured or getting broken training.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they run this PB and I'm sure they're delighted, but they're scratching their head
Yeah.
as well. And then it's
Yeah.
a nice feeling when you sort of that point is proven in practice and the person understands it then, and you get a lot
Yeah.
more buy-in from the athlete then.
And the thing about it as well is you're not always doing it forever. It's just this is a starting point, and then you can progress to the stage where you can actually run 40, 50, or 60 minutes continuously, but your heart rate stays uh, in a lower place and you're not getting that drift constantly going up, 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 up all the way through the run.
Yeah.
And until you get to that place, anyway, you don't have the conditioning to do anything else. You need to. So the walk jog protocol works really well for a lot of people, and to just develop that conditioning first, and then to progress to continuous. And there's so many ways you can do it. You can work it so many different ways and increase it different ways, and yeah, definitely very beneficial.
Good stuff. Is anybody else have any questions off the back of any of that, or anyone sitting with a question?
Just one small
Yeah.
question, Stephen. Thanks for the presentation. How do you get the sweet spot between like being self-critical and also being self-confident? Is there any kind of advice you could give there?
Yeah, yeah. I guess again, from a coaching perspective, we see so many people with such different personalities, and they have. I guess we're shaped by our our history, our experiences, our upbringing, and so many things from the past, and how we think, and our behaviors, etc. But uh, I think we we need to we obviously need to work on our self-belief and our self-confidence as human beings, right? It's important in life to believe in our abilities, to believe that we can achieve great things, and to to obviously have confidence in what we do as well. I think action is important in that front. I think when you act and you start something and you start to see improvements, etc., you start to build confidence. So for sure, thinking or talking about something is fine, but too many people think about things or talk about things, but they never do it. I think action is priority number one. Get going, start whatever it is, and then you start to feel better, and then you gain momentum. Um, Being self-critical, of course, there's a balance there. It's like, when I talk about having been able to self-reflect is important anyway in life in terms of, being self-aware of your feelings, about your behaviors, about your language, how you interact with people, how you speak with people, all those things I think are important anyway to think about in terms of a sporting performance perspective. It's important to self-reflect on just the simple questions like, am I being open and honest with my coach? Am I adhering to the training plan as prescribed? You know, am I looking after the simple fundamentals, the basics that are important, like my sleep and my nutrition? And am I kind of having a balance outside and I'm not getting too obsessed with my training? So asking yourself some simple questions and be able to give yourself honest answers, I think that helps because then it sets you on the right path in terms of your action and your behaviors and how you're going to approach your training and life outside of it. So, but I don't think we need to be critical or self-critical ever. It's more just it's self-aware and just being able to ask ourselves difficult questions sometimes, or if our coach maybe challenges us, that we don't think to take things personally. We take it kind of professionally in a way, and we know that they care if they're asking the questions or if they're challenging you, they care about you rather than that you know, they're doing it in any other way. Um, but yeah, just being self-aware, being able to ask yourself those questions and be able to give yourself honest answers. It just sets you on the right path or gives you some clarity. That's all. Um, and then obviously just working on having belief in our ability in anything in life and having just the self-confidence. But I think self-confidence comes through action, starting a project, doing it, getting going, and building momentum, and then you start to build the confidence from doing the work. And that goes for anything in life, I think. Does that answer it?
Yep, thanks a lot.
Anybody else? Any other questions? We'll probably wrap up soon, or if anyone has anything, just shout now. But anybody else? No.
It's not sort of about training principles or anything like that, but just cheaper fueling strategies for like longer efforts, especially on the bike. Obviously, whenever you get into the nuts and bolts of longer sessions, you need to fuel your workout effectively while you're on the thing. But on the same token, I don't really fancy forking out 250 quid a month on PF&H gels and sachets and stuff. So, like, what would you have any hints or tips for like a more budget friendly fueling strategy? Like, because I've been hammering pineapple juice and water for the last while for carbohydrate and stuff I'd have been on. But if there's anything else that you would like
Yeah.
suggest.
I guess there's homemade remedies that people can use. There's a couple of things in this front. One, I think the stuff that you can make at home and prepare. I mean, people prepare like oat squares, and that you can make out of porridge oats. You can have glazed in honey, bananas, dates are a great thing. There's good calories in dates, and there's something simple that you can use. And so there's various homemade things that you could make and prepare and have, tucked into your bike vest. Also, like on the drink side of things, something simple as we used to have in the past, just you have water in the bottle, you have a pinch of salt, and you put a drop of diluted orange or lime or pineapple, whatever you want on top, shake it up, and you have a little electrolyte drink there. So the simple things that you can do like that potentially that can work in training. The only thing I'd say on the sports nutrition front is you need to it's the trade-off between obviously what you're going to use on race day as well, and having some practice with taking that stuff on board as well. So there will need to be whatever you are going to plan to take on board on race day, you need to have some practice and preparation with that in training to ensure that you train the gut in the way and just train the stomach, etc., and that it goes down well, and that you're not having any issues with it, and just getting used to the amounts that you will take. So if you go out on the big bike ride, or if it's a big break, whatever it is, if it's a big day's training, that you just practice some of that stuff, that you're not going on race day and you're taking it for the first time. But I'm sure if you uh, Google you know, cycling, homemade, uh, food ideas or whatever, there'll be loads of stuff that will pop up, and loads of different stuff people make and just throw in their back pockets, that are more natural, probably healthier, and that do the job and far cheaper. It was definitely something when I was training for an Ironman. I got so sick of all the sugary stuff, on those long bikes and or long bricks, and um, not that I didn't have any issues with it in terms of my stomach or gut or anything. I just got sick of just putting sugary stuff down my neck. It was just a lot. And I prefer to eat a bit cleaner if I could. So there's a trade-off there, I guess, that you could work on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. It's obviously, as you say, you need to practice what you're going to use on race day, but it can be a fortune as well nowadays. Packs of gels and stuff. So there's, let's say, they're showing there's plenty of stuff online ideas, but I'll give you a shout after this too, and give you a list of things that be good for you to take on board.
Happy days, because it's just been like just a liter cartons of pineapple juice from concentrate, and mix it with water in your 1 liter sports drink. So just have a few of them at the table beside me, like. But I'm getting mighty bored of pineapple juice.
Juice is good, like fruit juice is good carbs, quick release and stuff. So it is good, but maybe change up the flavor, get some orange or something instead of pineapple. Um, but if is there anything else, and we can let Steve get going. I know he's in you're in different time zone, are you, Steve? Are you in Spain?
It's
Or
actually the
that's the
same.